I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Law Firm Owner Podcast, episode number 231. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work, for owners who want to grow a firm that gives them the life they want. Get crystal clear on where you're going, take planning seriously, and honor your plan like a pro. This is the work that creates velocity. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. Today, you are going to hear a conversation I got to have with Brita Long. Brita is someone that I've known about through some clients, through the online world, but this was our first chance talking. And what a conversation. You will hear a lot today. And I think the thing that I wanted to make clear from the get-go is that there is a passion for her to help lawyers figure out flat fees. And if you are listening to this and you want to figure out flat fees, you should talk to her. If you are someone who's listening to this and you're open to hearing about flat fees, but you're not quite ready, you're just not there, then that's okay. I want to make sure to say that up front. There's a couple times we said that, like she said that her job is not to convince people that this is what they should do, but you can hear, this is her job, right? You can hear how passionate she is that she believes law firm owners should move this route because it improves the quality of life and the margin for the business. And it creates a lot of freedom and time and money for the firm, and the clients are winning as well. So she's a big believer in this, and that's very clear. I threw a couple scenarios at her just of clients that I know that I have that are doing really well that are not flat fee. And, she has her ways to dismantle that. And you'll hear that in the podcast. I've given a lot of thought about it since we've talked, and I wanted to make sure to put this in here before the recording goes out, because here's what I know for sure. No matter what fee structure you're on, you can be successful. I've seen it. I've seen too many examples of it. Do I think flat fee is a really great way to go? In many cases, I do, but I'm not the person to help a law firm owner do that or make that change. Of course, that can be adjunctive to the work that I do with clients. And I think that if that's an interest and there's research done and they feel really strongly about it, the switch should be made. There's a lot of perks to having a flat fee business, especially when it comes to ownership of the business. And with that said, do not leave this conversation thinking that you cannot be successful if you are hourly. You can be. And does it mean that you should always stay hourly? No, I don't know. Everybody needs to come to that decision on their own, and they need to do so through facts, not feelings, not just because it's always been what they've done as hourly. So I do think it's worth listening to this conversation and seeing if there's something that you decide to look more deeply into for inside of your firm and how things are running. Hourly is harder. In many instances, it's harder. But don't leave this conversation thinking that anyone is saying that you can't be successful if you're hourly. I have too many examples inside of my sphere at Velocity Work where that is just not the truth. The truth is you can be successful no matter what fee structure you have. And you do need to be smart about it. And you do need to make sure that you are the value exchange, like with what your rates are, is what it should be. I believe deeply in that. But that is just one lever to pull to success. It's not the only lever. And so we're talking about one lever today. And I want to make sure that that's really clear to everybody that there's so many ways to pull levers. There's so many different levers you can pull to get to success. And today we're talking about one of them. And because we were so vertical on this topic, I do not want you to lose sight of the fact that this is one vertical. It's a meaningful one, but there is no blueprint. There is no recipe. And you hear us talk about that, but we're talking about with flat fees in the episode. We're talking about there is no blueprint for exactly how to do flat fees, what you should charge, like all of it. But also, higher level than that, there's no blueprint. There is no thing out there, and there is no one person out there that can say you should do things this way over here, and then this way here in your business, and then this way here in your business, and then this way here in your business. It doesn't work like that. And that includes fee structure. So while I think that this was a really interesting conversation, I have thought a lot about it since then. And I want to make sure that there is not a sense for listeners that my position, my stance at Velocity Work is dogmatic about the fact that you should be flat fee. I help people get successful no matter where they are. We decide what levers they need to pull for that. And sometimes this is an interest and this should be addressed. And Brita is the first person, the only person I would send them to get it sorted. I just want to make that clear. We are fee structure agnostic here at Velocity Work. My number one care, more than anything else, is that the owners that we work with are thriving. And sometimes one of the levers you can pull and the owners decide to pull is to go to flat fee. And that will assist with the thrive. But it's not the only thing. And if you're hourly, you can still thrive. I want you to know that. I want you to understand that. And it takes thought. You have to be very intentional. You can't be sloppy, right? If you're going to stay hourly and you want to thrive. But there's a path to success no matter what your fee structure. That I know for sure. So with that, I want you to listen to this conversation, keep an open mind to the things she's saying, really hear what she's saying. And if it resonates, then reach out to her because she can help. She has helped clients I've worked with, and she's made a big difference in their worlds. And that was a choice they decided to make. It's panning out really well. It doesn't have to look just like that. All right. This is a super interesting conversation. I hope you enjoy it. All right. Welcome to this week's show, everyone. I have a very special guest today, Brita Long. Brita, thank you for coming on the show and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, I am excited to have a conversation with you. I feel like in many ways we're cut from the same cloth, but do different work in the world. And your work is meaningful in the land of law firm owners, which is the world that we are both deeply a part of. One of the worlds that you are. I think there's other ones that you existed. I would love for you to just share with everyone who you are, where you are, and what you do.
My name is Brita, and I am the author and creator of The Happier Attorney. I still have my own law practice. I've had my own law practice since 2000, but I teach other attorneys how to use flat fees properly to charge for their legal services. And I also work with my clients on deep personal development.
Yeah. Okay. How long have you had the business for working with lawyers on flat fee? Okay.
About 4.5, almost 5 years.
Nice. And why is this work so important to you? Why did you decide to do this? I'm sure you're busy enough.
Well, it started by accident. I had taken a little sabbatical from practice. I had moved from Seattle to rural Texas. My father was passing away. Long story short, I bought a farmhouse. It was a disaster. Put every penny I had ever had into it. It was just a nightmare. My father dies. I sell it. I had not a nervous breakdown, but I call it a simplicity breakdown, where I just had to throw up my hands and realize what I was doing was not working. Doing it the Brita way, going 1,000,000 miles an hour, pushing through, wasn't working. And I had some things to figure out. And so I had some money from the sale of the farm, and I started writing, and I loved writing. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. And, I'm going to buy a place in Vermont and wear tweed. And, I probably have to start drinking whiskey at 10 a.m. as a good writer does, all of the things. And the romantic notion of writing gets old pretty quick when you start going broke. It sounds great on paper to be a broke writer, but it's not so great in practice. And I was in these incredible think tanks and writing groups with the most incredible people. And there were some kids in there. When I say kids, like in their late 20s, early 30s. And they were doing some really incredible things. And some of them were doing like online courses and doing very well. And I was still so much thinking like an attorney. But I'm like, okay, I can either, start the practice back up again, or I can try something else just for now. And I was like, well, what do I know? And I was, again, still thinking like an attorney. I'm like, I don't know anything. I don't know how to do anything. And then I'm like, wait, I have charged flat fees. I've done that for a long, long time. Most other attorneys don't know how to do it. Maybe I could teach them that. And instantly I came up with all of the reasons why that's a horrible idea. It's really simple. Well, yeah, it was simple because I had been doing it a long time. No attorney is ever going to pay me to teach them how to do this. Wrong. Attorneys won't understand it. I'll get laughed at. I mean, all of the all of the fear things. And I was like, well, I might as well just let's just try it and see what happens. And I had some really great support. And so I took some classes on online courses. I don't do technology. I certainly did not know what I was doing with online courses. And so the more that I learned, the more I'm like, this is okay. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And one of the first things I did was start this Facebook group, Attorneys and Flat Fees. And I remember the first day I had over 100 people join. And I remember just sitting on the floor crying because I was like, this can work. People are actually interested in this. This could be a thing. And I created a thing. So that's how I got started. And in that time, I was doing my own really intense personal growth work. It really took the majority of my time and focus for about 3 years and a heck of a lot of money. And through that, when I was teaching flat fees, I very quickly realized that flat fees, teaching the things, the tools, I used to say it was 5%. Now I don't even know that it's that. The rest is some mindset, mostly your relationship with yourself. And that might sound ridiculous. That's okay. If people aren't there yet, that's fine. But it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the more that I did my own work, the more I could see it in other attorneys and the more I could see it in myself years ago. And so then I started working with attorneys on their own internal development. And when you see the changes and the results in people, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty addictive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I reached out to you is because we have one mutual client that I know of for sure, and just the transformation in the firm, the whole firm, because of the transformation inside of the individuals has been really remarkable. And so that made me very excited to talk to you. And I know there's a lot of other people in my sphere that also have read your book. They know about you. They haven't hired you yet, but they're like thinking about it. So I thought, well, let's just talk and have a conversation and see if we can shed a little light for everyone around the work that you do. I have one more question about your background, because you said you've done flat fees forever. When did you start doing flat fees? Why did you start doing flat fees when it really wasn't a conventional thing to do? And why do you think you were successful with them when so many people on their own don't do it in a way that's sustainable or really provides what flat fees can provide?
One of these days, I should just really do a deep dive in QuickBooks and find out the date, but I don't know exactly when I made the switch. It had to have been 2006, 2005, 2006. I was practicing family law and I'd been a deputy prosecuting attorney beforehand. And so I knew criminal defense attorneys charged flat fees. And I had all of the issues that most other attorneys have. I had done the empire building thing. I'd had associates. I'd had Class A on the water, the 10-person conference table with real leather chairs. I had what I could not even imagined having. And I remember one day in particular, my accountant, who's still my accountant, sent me over tax stuff. The firm had earned more than I could have ever contemplated. It was a number it couldn't have even wrapped my head around it. And I didn't know if I had gas to get home or money to get more gas. So there was a little disconnect there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had done all of the things. From day one, I tracked my time contemporaneously, which I thought everybody did. No, they do not. I didn't discount very much. I took every practice management CLE I could get my hands on, and I followed their advice. I sent out statements on the same day every month to coincide with a little bit before the first for payday. I sent out great descriptions. I sent out little notes on the descriptions. Nobody ever questioned my work. They just didn't pay me. And so here I am, and I'm practicing family law. I am going into the lion's den to retrieve this kid. I'm coming out bruised and bloody, and then you're not paying me? Are you kidding me? And I was like, this is insane. When you're driving by, I remember driving by a dry cleaners once, and they had a helpline sign on the marquee. And I'm like, that wouldn't be so bad. I mean, crazy, crazy thoughts, right? Absolutely crazy. And the haunting kept going. The thought in your head, and it just won't go away. It haunts you. I was like, there has got to be a way to charge a flat rate for family law. If we can get a person to the flippin' moon, we can figure this out. This cannot be that difficult. And I knew criminal defense attorneys did it. So, I have this thought. So I kept thinking that, how would I do this? How would I do this? And then I don't know how I found him, but I found Mark Chin. Everybody should know who Mark Chin is. He is a great family law attorney out of Jackson, Mississippi. Great attorney, great man, great person. And he had written an ebook on flat fees in family law. I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, I wasn't crazy. Somebody else had been thinking the same thing. And he was well respected, like he wasn't some crazy ass person, And so I read his book, immediately started. I mean, like immediately. And I tweaked it. I tweaked it a lot to fit me and to deal with some things some issues that I was running into that weren't addressed. And I just took the ball and ran, never looked back, was never tempted to look back. Can't imagine looking back.
In the book, the ebook by Mark Chen, did he talk about how to determine the fees that you were going to set? Like, did you have guidance on that, or you did that on your own?
Yeah, a little. And then I refined it a lot.
Okay.
A lot.
Yeah.
And we attorneys, we want the formula. And in the Facebook group, one of the rules is we don't talk about price. That's for several reasons. There's antitrust issues, but the most important reason is that's not the thing. People think, oh, if I just get a formula, I will learn how to use flat fees. That's not how it works. And there's not a set formula. Thinking that there's a set formula is part of the problem, is part of the mindset problem, because it's continuing to go back into thinking that your only worth is your time or this certificate or whatever, which I get why. That's what we're taught. And it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. So in the book, there's kind of a formula. If you just rely on that, you'll do better with flat fees than you certainly will with hourly. You'll get your time back. You'll simplify your practice. You'll make more money. But if you want to really take this, you really want to see where this motor can take you, the less you rely on a formula and the more you rely on instinct and really what you want to get paid, that's where things blow sky high.
It's a different world, a different realm. But one of the things that I think people who listen to this podcast know is that I detest blueprints or formulas, and people want that. And it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in a way that's going to give them what they really want, which is what you're talking about.
You understand why people want that, though.
It's easy.
They think it's easy. Well, they think it's easy.
I think you and I would agree. There is some work to dig in and figure out what does make sense for you.
Right.
And people don't know how to do that work, I think, oftentimes. So they would rather just have the shortcut to something better. And not that people should be ashamed of doing that. I think to your point, it will get them to go from 0 to 1. But from there, there's real work that can be done.
Right.
That'll blow up your whole
And how often
concept.
do shortcuts ever work?
Right.
They
temporarily. Temporarily, maybe.
Okay. So, when people are like, how much do you charge for X? Okay. Again, we don't discuss it. I'm not going to ever say. And the bigger question is, I don't know. I can't tell you. I can tell you what, price is completely nonsense, but I can't be in every consultation with you. Okay. And this is subjective. Price is subjective. Value is subjective. And people hate that. Attorneys hate that. It's the truth though. But when I get pushback from clients, when I say clients, I mean attorney clients, and they're like, I need to know. And here's our mutual clients, one of the ones that I'm thinking of. I've done the spreadsheet. And when people talk about spreadsheets, I immediately start rolling my eyes like, okay, I'll placate you. Tell me about your spreadsheet. And I've done the research, have all the numbers, and I got the spreadsheet. They'll come up with a number. Okay, great. And then it doesn't take 2 minutes before they do an exercise with me that might sound a little woo-woo. It's not. And I'm like, okay, what's your number now? Their new number is always at least 30% higher.
That's amazing.
Instantly.
But the spreadsheet was like exponentially better than they were doing. And you're saying that's not it. This isn't where it stops. Yeah. And
it might be, but it never has been.
Yeah. So, okay, maybe you already said it, but just to close the loop. So what is the reason, in your words, what's the reason people want the shortcut? They just want the answer so they can go in their world and apply the answer.
Well, because we're human beings.
Yeah.
We're human beings. And down is easier than up. And we want easy. We want shortcuts. It's the same reason that even though we know that weight loss shake is crap, that new pill is going to kill us, that we still are going to do it because the alternative is saying no to the mac and cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say no to the mac and cheese. So I'm going to delude myself into that this shake will do it. And we are incredibly busy. We have busyfied ourselves to the extreme. And that's normal people. Attorneys, forget it. And we're in this culture, I think, of fast, cheap, easy, where, again, we've kind of deluded ourselves into that we can, get that. I use the example, real mashed potatoes versus instant. You can get instant mashed potatoes. I really don't know how long it takes to make instant mashed potatoes, but a lot faster than real mashed potatoes. I remember as a kid, my mom making instant mashed potatoes. Gun to my head, I could not eat them today. Okay.
Yeah.
So people want instant because they don't understand the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are so busy. We are so busy. And I think people think that this is just about your price. It's not. Flat fees is not just about your price. If you use them properly, if you spend the time and the money and the effort and feel the feelings, they will not only change your entire practice, they will change your life. And I'm not being dramatic.
Yep.
I'm not.
I totally agree. I wrote that sentence down. They want instant because they don't understand the difference. That is true. You almost don't know what you don't know. And when someone can be there to walk you through and facilitate a deeper understanding, your world will change. Even if you don't do X, Y, and Z after that, there's a before and after the moment that you really understand the difference.
And our attorney culture is so screwed up. Our culture is premised on this belief of the more we work, the higher to heaven we go, that our worth isn't our work product. It's not how we treat people. It's not whether we do right by our clients or not. It is all in our time and how hard we work.
And how much you can get done.
Badge of self-worth is bragging to each other about working on the weekends. That's pretty sick. And then we sit here and wonder why attorneys are drug addicts and alcoholics and numbing themselves to death, committing suicide. And I don't think that flat fees are the panacea to all the world's ills, of course, but they're a darn good start.
Yeah, because of how hard it has you looking inside.
When used properly, they instantly give you bandwidth. They give you bandwidth in time. They give you bandwidth in money. They give you bandwidth in energy. So then you can deal with the other things that you need to deal with or that you could deal with.
But it's almost like, based on what you're saying, which to give you those things, which that's the result, but you can't get those things unless you do the inner work. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
The reason people don't get their flat fees or they don't use their fees properly, as you just stated, so that they can get bandwidth of more energy, time, money, fulfillment, whatever it is because there's a lot to navigate for most people internally to be able to get to the place where they can do what they need to do with the fees to give them those results.
It's complicated. I mean, I have talked to people. I'm using one story, but this isn't uncommon. I remember talking to two attorneys using hourly. Both admitted that what they were doing was not sustainable financially, not sustainable to their lives. Both working 60 hours a week, which that's not sustainable, y'all. Okay. Based on what they were not billing, they were doing the work, but weren't billing of at least 4 hours a day. They're billing at $400 an hour. That means each attorney was working, but not collecting $1,600 a day. A day. I don't care who you are. That's a lot of money. Okay. And what I tell people is, well, I show them it gets worse because it's not just that you're not making the money that you earned. You're paying for the privilege. We all have overhead. If you have a business, it's very expensive. So you are paying money to have this business in which people are not paying you. It would be like I have a bookshop and I have rent and I have to buy the books and I have to have the staff and the cleaning person. And at least half of the people are just walking out with books. Is that sustainable? And here's my solution. I'll just work harder. I'll just buy more books and make it up in volume. I mean, if you translated what attorneys do to another business, it's absurd on its face. Likewise, it's absurd on its face. This is a no-brainer, right? Like they're losing $1,600 a day. Almost anything they do, I mean, that's hemorrhaging. Do you think that they worked with me? They did not. She wasn't sure. She wasn't sure about how this was going to work. Okay, well, I don't know how an airplane gets off the ground. I'm still on an airplane all the time. You don't have to know how all of the things work right now. Okay? You got to trust a little bit here. Okay? If this didn't work, I wouldn't have a bar number.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? And I've got two of them. And I wouldn't have a line full of other attorneys behind me. She wouldn't do it. Well, nothing's going to change. Absolutely nothing is going to change in their practice. So when you see that clearly on its face, okay, they would have made back what they spent on me at the time within a matter of days. I'm not kidding. Okay. And I've had clients start working with me and earn $20,000, $30,000 more that week. I'm not kidding. So logically, it made no sense that they didn't. Why they didn't move forward has nothing to do with flat fees or that they don't work. It's complicated. I don't know them well enough to be able to say exactly what. It can be fear. It can be, I'm not willing to sit and be uncomfortable because this is uncomfortable. Anytime you learn something new, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're trying something new. That's going to be uncomfortable. Flat fees, people think it's new. It's not. It's how attorneys charged since we've had attorneys up until recently, actually. But people think it's new. It's not. You know, are other attorneys going to judge me? All of the things. But what it really comes down to is, you know, I'm more comfortable sitting in the crap than doing what I need to do to get out of the crap.
Right.
To risk getting out of the crap.
Right. Before we got on, we were talking about mindset, and you were talking about how it's so much deeper than mindset. And you compared someone living on rice and beans as an example. Will you run with that for everyone?
Sure. And I've been there. I work with so many attorneys, and we don't share our personal stories as attorneys. The perception is we can't be vulnerable. I had no idea there were so many traumatized attorneys out there. No idea. And so when you have an issue with boundaries, when you have an issue with self-esteem, when you have whatever issues all of us have, every single one of us has our shit, that comes forward. That affects everything that you do, whether you think it does or not. And so when I have someone who is highly resistant, like a client, they've signed up, but they're still resistant, and they're attorneys. We're smart. We're coming up with all of the wonderful sounding rationale as to why I can't do this or that. And my favorite is I live in a rural area. That's my favorite one of why you can't price or use flat fees or why. It's all fear. And some of it is fear of the unknown. Some of it is fear of success. What if this does work? I know how to deal with being poor. I know how to deal with working 60 hours a week and being up to my eyeballs in alligators. I don't know how to do that. And that's really scary. Of course, that's not conscious. That's all subconscious, which is a million times more powerful than conscious thought. So we were talking about one client, and his partner was full on, let's go flat fees. And he was very excited, and he started working the numbers, and he started talking to his client about all the what we could do. And I said, stop, stop. He's not there yet. He is not psychologically and emotionally there yet. We have to go little steps because he's starving right now. So if you've been starving, a great example of this is if anybody saw Better Call Saul, there's an episode where he's out in the desert and he's dehydrated. I'm an Arizona girl. When you're dehydrated, there's nothing like it. And he gets water and he just starts chugging it. And the guy next to him slaps it out of his hand, because if he had done that, you're going to throw up. You can't do that. It's kind of like if somebody has ever fallen in a frozen lake, they don't just put them in warm water. They'll go into shock, I think. I'm not a doctor. So you have to take little bites, little steps. You can't overwhelm. So the benefits of flat fees, they're all true. But sometimes when I talk about really what they can do, it's overwhelming for people and they tune out. It's like it's too good to be true, or it's too good to be true for them. And that is all internal. And that's why they will self-sabotage with flat fees.
Mm-hmm. So if they've been eating rice and beans up until this point,
and you set them in front of an all-you-can-eat, buffet at, the Ritz Paris, they're going to get sick real fast, or they're going to get overwhelmed.
Yep. Or they're just going to ask for rice and beans.
Or they're just going to ask for rice and beans.
Right. Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah. Will you say more about, you sort of started to touch on it earlier, and it feels like the perfect time to dig into this, that attorneys, in air quotes, can't be scared, and how that contributes to the trappedness that they're experiencing.
And I think of myself, I remember I started out as a litigator, as a prosecuting attorney, scared out of my mind, in my little Ann Taylor suit with, the cross in the back where I hadn't even known to clip it, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Scared out of my mind. But you have to pretend. You had to pretend I'm not scared. I know what I'm doing. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing, And how many times, you talk to other attorneys, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. Never been busier. Going great. And then a week later, they kill themselves. True story. Okay. We are not allowed to be vulnerable. We are not allowed to ask for help. And obviously, there's nothing legally stopping us. But what happens when we ask for help? Oh, we get the lawyer assistant program involved. Great. Now we're afraid that our bar license is going to be taken or suspended or, whatever. I don't know enough about those programs to really criticize them, but I know, the road to hell is paved with good intention.
It shows weakness.
It shows weakness.
Yeah.
Okay. And this machismo, anyone who knows anything about real growth knows that, the lion doesn't have to roar. Real strength, you don't need to walk around saying, I'm the strongest man out here. And we attorneys, we foster this culture of never being weak, and it's destroying us, in my opinion. That is one of the things that is absolutely destroying us. I give the example of a friend of mine. Her husband was a family law attorney outside of Seattle, and good attorney, had won all these awards. On paper, anybody looked at him, oh, he's a great attorney, he's successful, he's doing all of the things, blah, 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 blah. Well, internally, it was a mess. He didn't have good boundaries. He never said no to a client. Well, it's as predictable as day comes after night to see what would happen. The client on Monday hires him, he drops everything, works on that case. Tuesday, client hires him, he drops everything, works on that case. You can just see us starting to revolve around the drain here. And then the phone call started. What's going on with my case? You were supposed to do this, blah, blah, blah. The deadline started getting missed. Long story short, then the bar complaint started. He had a hearing on Tuesday, his first bar hearing. And I will preface this with what I know about what happened and what I know about the bar. And after practicing since 1997, he would not have gotten in serious trouble with a bar. He certainly would not have gotten his bar, not anything close to it. He probably wouldn't have even gotten a public censure. What would have happened is, at worst, them say, we need to bring somebody else in here to help you and get this sorted out. And in the meantime, you don't take cases. Okay. The Friday before the bar hearing, he shot himself. He left 3 kids and his wife. Life is complicated. There's not generally one simple, this is why, or this is how the fix, but when we live in a culture, when we have a professional culture where it is perceived that it is better to kill yourself than go to a bar hearing, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's like I'm listening to you say this, and it's heartbreaking. It's like, wow, they can't see the truth. They're so far removed from what is true that this is the outcome of that.
Right.
And that, like, wow. I mean, if there's one message from this whole thing, I think it should be, especially to honor stories like that. Question what you believe to be true. Be willing to question it and have a look. And I mean, that is deep work, because if you've been ingrained in a culture and in a society that says this is the way, this is the truth, without questioning it, then
even if it kills you. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, think about it. Think about it. Like, there have been some pretty famous examples as of late of attorneys behaving horribly, like killing their wife and their child. And I don't say allegedly anymore. He's been convicted. But again, life is complicated. I'm not here to psychoanalyze this guy. But the thought for most attorneys, our identity is so wrapped up into being an attorney. And there's so much shame. We are a very shame-based culture in the legal profession, where people think they would die if they didn't practice law. Like, if that was taken away from them, they couldn't function. Now, look, my license has never been threatened in any way. I practice family law. I've had a couple bar complaints, but, they've never gone anywhere. I've never had a hearing. Okay. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, I'd be fine. I do know that I'd be fine because I went without practicing for a couple of years in this sabbatical. And you know what? It was great. I came back because my son, he got licensed, and so that's what we're doing. Life is fine on the other side. I go through this exercise with attorneys in regard to scarcity, because when you get into scarcity and you get into fear, especially when you get, high in the numbers, you don't function. You go into fear, flight, freeze. And literally the blood stops going to your brain. It goes to your extremity so you can fight, you can flee, you can freeze. Okay. And that's great if an actual bear is in front of you. But when we're imagining, and here we are as attorneys, I get it. Our whole gig is fear-based. Okay. But here we are attorneys, we're in, the Sahara Desert, and we're like, oh, there could be a polar bear behind that bush. Okay. There's not a polar bear behind that bush. Well, okay. But if there was, here's what, we make it up. We're not able to actually think to solve the problem. So one of the exercises I do with my clients is, really let's talk about, worst case scenario. Okay. If there's a polar bear in the Sahara, first of all, is that ever likely? No. And if there was, the polar bear is going to be a lot more miserable than you are. And, one of two things are going to happen. You're either going to be okay or you're going to be dead. You're not going to have much control over that, but there's not a polar bear there. And if you have a problem, there's a solution. So let's go through. Okay, and I used to do the same thing. Oh, an initial cancels, and you immediately go into, oh, I'm never going to get a client again. I'm going to lose my practice. I'm going to get disbarred, go bankrupt, die alone in a ditch. Okay, in a split second. When you're in that fear-based mode, you react. You don't sit back and think and make clear decisions. So that's when you take on the case that you shouldn't take on. That's when, in a flat fee, when you should be saying 10, you say 2. Then you just create this self-fulfilling prophecy. You either stay in the same loop or you go down the drain further.
It's so wild to me, but I love it so much how this really all revolves around perception, the unwillingness to be uncomfortable or to sit with the fear when you make an intentional decision that's more in line with your best, highest good. And of those around you, by the way, not just for you as a person, but your clients, everybody ultimately wins when you line yourself up differently. It's the thing that makes me tick to contemplate and to dig into. The internal is the work. It's not the logistical, because people, I'm sure the first questions to you are not only what is the formula, but then well, do you have the contracts? Do you have the spreadsheets? Do you have the fee
agreement? I just want the fee agreement. I just want the fee agreement.
Exactly. All the things that I need to do so I could just go do this thing. And none of that, all of that is figure outable and not the hard part.
Right. And this work makes you a better attorney.
Yeah. Okay. So talk more about that.
Night and day.
I wanted to go into that, but I'm just thinking of the listeners who are hourly and they're extremely profitable and they're not unhappy and they're thinking okay.
I'm going to push back on that because that doesn't exist. Okay. And here's why I say that. The math doesn't work, Melissa. The math doesn't work.
What if their effective hourly rate is $800 an hour? Does that work?
I can get a calculator. Okay. I can get a calculator right now. Okay. You're at $800 an hour. You're at a big firm. You're at $1,000 an hour. Okay. I know what the overhead of big firms are. The math is never going to work with hourly. All right. Because let's just say I'm moving my office. I can't find my calculator.
That's okay. I can punch numbers if you want me to.
You're either going to be, how shall I put this? Padding, or you're going to be having lots of attorneys do other things, whatever. But I'll play your game. Let's say you're at $1,000 an hour and you're billing 4 hours a day. That means that you're still working 8 to 12 hours a day. Study after study has shown for every hour that you're billed, you're working 2 to 3. Okay. So fine. You're making 800,000. You're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 6 days a week. I would bet any amount of money. And you know what? Maybe there's somebody out there who would say, I am perfectly happy working 60, 70 hours a week. Okay, let's test that out. So you're telling me that you are physically healthy. I know you're not. I can look at you. There's no way that you're physically healthy. If you're working that means that you are eating whatever the heck you can eat at the food court. That means you aren't exercising. You're not sleep. Oh, how many hours a night are you sleeping? Okay. I mean, basic physical health. All right. If you are physically unhealthy, I've never met anybody who's physically unhealthy who can honestly say they're happy. Okay. When you're not sleeping, you're not happy. When you're in pain, you are not happy. When you can't walk without not being able to breathe, you're not happy. Okay. Let's talk about your relationships. You're telling me that you have a great, healthy, connected to your spouse marriage when you see them half an hour a day? Really? Okay. Let's talk about your kids. One of my clients, well, he called to schedule the day after he was putting his 4-year-old to bed, just tucking her in at night. And she said, Daddy, where's your phone? Up until that moment, he thought he was a great parent. So I don't buy, oh, I'm happy as a lark, because I don't buy it.
So I'm thinking of specific examples that, well, first of all, I am all about simplification in your business. I think that does wonders. So I'm all for flat fees, but I'm also not, I don't take the role to tell clients that do have hourly to make that switch. So I work with them where they are. And there are certain people I'm thinking about that they have gotten themselves to an average of 800 an hour, but their one associate isn't, right? And so there's not near as much margin with that role. He really isn't working 60 or 70 hours a week. However, could his life be easier if they made this switch? I think the answer is probably yes. I don't know. And he's probably going to listen.
I would guarantee you, if I talked to him and we went through, kind of my life quiz, how are things going?
His world is okay, but okay. So here's the thing. Without him, the firm would not be okay. And so you're trying to build something that doesn't need you in it as much. And you've locked yourself into where all the income is coming from you. I mean, he doesn't overwork, but he's also, the way things are sitting, he is in a spot he cannot get out of because of the way this has all been built. There is that. And if you're listening, sir, I know you know what I'm talking about, but it is a huge improvement on where he was. So I'm just thinking, do I need to take a stance where I'm like, listen, everybody, if you're going to do strategic planning, you also have to go work with Brita.
There are some people who get very upset, very, very upset about people charging flat fees. Like, what you're doing is unethical. Well, I would love to hear more about that. Like, please tell me how or where. Okay. And when anyone gets emotional like that, I always know that, it has nothing to do with flat fees. There's something else going on here. But, if somebody says, I love using hourly, which I have never heard in my life, but okay. I love using hourly. I'm totally happy using hourly. I make plenty of money. I don't overwork. Everything's great. Okay. One attorney is coming to mind who would say just that. Okay. And here's what I know, just because I know this person on a deeper level. On paper, life is great. On paper, she's right. She doesn't overwork. She makes good money. She's well respected. And I know that internally there are some real issues there.
Okay. 2 questions. I think this one should come first. There is a guide out there. I think people that really toot this horn probably say it's the standard. I don't believe that. Again, that's like a formula, right? 3x, 4x, 5x in terms of multiple. So also other people, they also use the words grinder, minder, and finder to go with this. So meaning what the cost is to have that attorney work at the firm and perform their work as an attorney. So let's just say, for round numbers, which is pretty low, but let's just say 100K is the total cost. By the way, anyone out there that thinks that that's the total cost, is
right? I was going to say, what?
Yeah. But there's some people that the salary is less than that, so they think that's the total cost. But by the time you stack in taxes, benefits, all the things, well, let's just say 100K to keep it round. Then they should at least be able to produce 3x for the firm, but that's meaning $300,000 is what they produce for the firm. But if they are only doing 3x, they should also probably be bringing in business or another way of contribution to the firm, or maybe managing a team, etc. So not as much time as being billed. I know this is all hourly. Okay, then there's 4x. That's what this guide is called, as minders, meaning they mind other things in the firm, which is just management. So maybe they don't bring anything in. They're not a rainmaker, but they do management inside of the firm. So they probably don't bill as much. So they bring in about 400,000 if they're making 100,000. And if they are 5X, that means most of the time, all they should be doing is cranking out work. So these are newer associates that are learning the ropes.
Okay, not to interrupt you, but does that sound attractive to you?
No, I'm not saying it's attractive, but let me ask you this.
That sounds insane to me.
It does sound insane. The hourly billing that's required for 5X is basically the way that I've heard this put by a fractional CFO that subscribes to this, that you have to be reasonable. So that person does need to be able to go to the bathroom. They need breaks, but most of their time should be billing. And so they have the most amount of hours underneath them. So, okay, from a profit perspective, in terms of, I am ignoring for the moment the happier attorney conversation. I'm just looking at the business side. That is a path to profitability.
Short
term profitability. Okay, I'll go with that. Most of the time, the people I work with, they're not interested in 5Xing. Like, they are interested in a culture that they're proud to be a part of. And so are the people that work there. These are people that would never consider flat fee. Literally never. They've never considered it before. It gives a guide to work towards so that they make sure everything is profitable. Most people aren't even at 3X that I meet.
And here's the thing. I would say it sounds great on paper. Anyone who's ever hired attorneys or had attorneys work for them or any employees, no, it's not that simple. And I mean, think of how you just described that. It sounded like something out of Dickens.
I hear you. But if they are hourly, they have to think in a way like this, or they will be in the red. They have to think in this kind of way.
Which is why the system, the foundation doesn't work.
Okay,
it's not meant to work.
So they don't want to be in the red, and they're hourly. And so they really do have to pay attention to those as a guide. And that's not true for every single firm. There's some firms that do under 3 and they do okay. But I really do. When you look at the numbers, I'm sure you're like, well, of course, it really does have to line up. There's a range for any firm given on what their practice area is, where they are, what they're dealing with, what their rates are. But there is a range that they need to look at and find their normal, like what matters to them, what range should they be in, or else they're not going to be profitable. And that's going to put a ton of stress on the business. And that's the truth. And so if you're listening and you're hourly and you don't have any idea about any of this, there's a really good chance that you are being asleep at the wheel is never a good thing. Never, never, never. So I'm not saying that they should be hourly, but they should have a read on some of this. If they have a read on this and they decide, I'm going to stay in here, I'm going to put my stake in the ground, I'm going to stay hourly because I'm going to have to pay attention to all these things this way, and they don't move to flat fee, that's one thing. If they are open-minded enough to entertain what it could look like to be flat fee for themselves, and most of them have probably thought, that's not for me, that doesn't work for me, that doesn't apply to me. But if they're willing to entertain the idea that they could shift into being a flat fee practice, how do they know? And so is this part of like what you dig in with on them?
We hadn't even talked about this.
Okay, yeah.
So I give a workshop every month to decide or not to decide. And it's a little bit about flat fees, but it's helping people move through the process of deciding, because the indecision costs so much. The back and forth costs so much, and people make learning flat fees a lot bigger than it actually is. Don't make it overwhelming. So yeah, that is part of the process of working with me, is working through the doubts and looking at, what this would look like and whether it would work for you or not. And, people used to ask me, will flat fees work for every attorney? And I'm like, yeah, unless you're doing contingency. I don't say that anymore. If an attorney is getting their self-esteem out of overworking, out of being busy, it's not going to work. And so I don't try and convince people to do flat fees. The numbers are what the numbers are. Math is math. You can't change it. And when you run the numbers, you are always, if you use flat fees properly, you are always going to be ahead with flat fees. Always. And so, if people want to stay with the old, okay, good luck to them. Good luck, because there are enough of us going over to flat fees and clients are demanding it, and there's a lot of competition out there. I don't know that that's going to work in 10 or 20 years. So,
I do agree with that.
Good luck.
Yeah. It is part of it is something we talk about a lot inside of velocity work is you have to know the facts. Like you get to decide what you do with those, but you have to know the facts. So if they do move to flat fee, I don't think this, I'm just clarifying for listeners. It's not like you do a bunch of internal work and think about, well, how much are you worth? And then you put a number to it and you flip over to that and it's definitely going to take care of all the numbers in the firm. There's more to it than that. Is that?
Well, of course.
I mean, I know that it sounds like, well, of course, but I think a lot of people don't understand when we talk about deep internal work, it's almost like this or that. And I think both are so important and they both go hand in hand. And you can't do the numbers without the internal work. And you can't really do the internal work without the numbers if you're going to actually make it.
So here's what I'm talking about to give people some perspective of, what we're talking about. So in the group coaching calls that I had one attorney who had been in my group for a while and still was not making even like subsistent level income. And so we're diving in going, okay, what is going on here? I mean, she can't pay her bills. She's in an incredible area in the country that, look, if you can't make a crap ton of money there, I don't know what to tell you. She has clients. She has a good reputation. She's turning work away. She has so many clients. She's using flat fees and she's still barely eating. So what in the world is going on? Well, here's what's going on. Her self-esteem is crap, absolute crap. So even when she had doubled her price and then doubled her price, if your price is supposed to be 10 and you start at 1, you can double it. You get to 2, you double it at 4. There's a whole long way before 10. So we're in this group and she knows the other attorneys, but she doesn't know their work product. And she had a case that was coming up, a client that she knew really well. And she was describing what was going to be involved. And it was commercial litigation. Okay. Big stuff. And I forget the number that she was going to quote them, but I think it was $12,000 or something, where I'm like, okay, there's not a perfect number and I'm not going to quote the number. I don't do commercial litigation, but I know it ain't that. And so I said, okay, we'll call her Janet. I said, Janet, and I named off the other people in the call. If this potential client had come to Lindsay or Julie or Sam, and they asked you what they should price it, what would you say? Every single one of them, she was like 70,000, 80,000. Here, she had priced her own at 12. That's what we're talking about internal work. She didn't view herself as worthy or deserving of more than 12,000. And even when she saw what she had just done, because I'm like, okay, well, why are they worth 10 times what you just quoted for yourself? It didn't have anything to do with logic. The other thing that we do internal work is we talk a lot about what is your value? What is the value to that potential client of hiring you? And we get specific, how much money is it going to cost them if they go to somebody else who has a caseload that is too big to handle? What is it going to cost them if they go to somebody who screws it up? What's it going to cost them to have it fixed legally if they can? What's it going to cost them in terms of time off work, in terms of their business, in terms of their reputation, in terms of their relationships, their marriages, all of the things? What is the actual value? And some of this is tangible. A lot of it's intangible. We attorneys, we don't think that we have any value other than our time, right? When you have to start thinking about your own value, that seeps into every other aspect of your life. I had one client early on who ended a physically abusive relationship as a result of this work because she had to start thinking about her value. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. If I'm bringing some value to my clients, wait a minute. I have something to bring to the table and I'm bringing it in. She got out of a really bad situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about, internal growth and development work a little bit.
So you do help them think through the value-based pricing and think through the different angles that they need to consider when they are setting the fees or range of fees that on a consult can be used. That is, I think, helpful for people listening. Sometimes I'll have people come in that have done flat fee and now like they're coming to me for strategic planning and to get organized and all that stuff. And that's great. And I'll learn through their story that they did do flat fee and now they're just going back to hourly. And I'm like, oh man.
Because they didn't do it right.
I know. I totally know that. I know that the reason they didn't do it right is because they didn't price it high enough. I do know that because they were going broke after they went to flat fee, but they weren't taking into consideration, like you're talking about value. They weren't even talking about what it's going to take to cover.
Right.
And
God bless us as attorneys. I say this, I live in the South, so I can say that. Think about how arrogant that is or how naive or whatever. Like, okay, so just because I'm an attorney, and I used to think the same way, I'm smart enough, I should be able to figure this out myself. Okay, so I'm a pretty smart person, but this is a new skill. And just like any skill, it takes practice. And it really does help to have someone who, knows what they're talking about to teach you. And I ask people, I'm like, okay, I use this example a lot. Do you bake? No. Okay. Or some people say yes. I said, great. Making bread's really simple. You put some salt and some water and some flour together and a little yeast, or maybe not. You mix it together. You sit there, you let it rise, and then you put it in the oven. There, you have your bread. If you went home and tried to make bread like that, how's that going to work out? It's going to be a disaster. Even if you watch a YouTube video, have a recipe, you know how many loaves of bread you have to throw out before you get one that's edible? It takes some practice. And so you have people who don't know what they're doing, don't even have a recipe, going home, trying to make bread. And when it turns out to be a loaf of crap, oh, flat fees don't work. That's absurd. You have to learn what you're doing. And it takes years for the issues to come up. And that's without the mindset. Years for the issues to come up and work through them. That's why it's helpful to learn. And I tell people that flat fees are incredibly powerful. Make no doubt they will change everything if used properly. If not, they're dangerous. It's like a power saw. If your job is to cut a log and you've been using a handsaw, okay, it works. You can get the job done. You're cutting, a log a day. I don't know how long it takes to cut a log. Let's say a log a day. And then sometimes comes along with a power saw, like game changer, life changer. And if you don't know the safety features, you could die. So when people say flat fees don't work, yeah, because you plugged in the saw and you lost a hand because you didn't read the safety manual.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's not the saw's fault.
Right. Mm-hmm. So cool. I love that you do this. I don't know if there's other people doing this or not. I certainly haven't come across them that does specifically the work that you do, as niche focused as you do. There's so many layers and levels to people just rising up and continuing to sort of unfold and create what they want to create and do what they want to do. And I do feel like you are such a powerful tool that people can use for themselves in this way. The work that we do with clients changes their life in a way that, like, they don't even know how to plan. They don't know how to think. They don't know what numbers to look at. And they get very organized and they get very intentional. And of course, everything improves because of that. But this is not something that I am an expert on. This is not my thing. I shouldn't teach this, what you teach. And to me, it's almost like, just like you said before, you can get yourself from 0 to 1. And in many cases, I do have a lot of flat fee clients. They are doing fantastic, but there's those that aren't, or they're flat fee and they're not enough, or they're hourly. And so they're always going to have an extra scrutiny on everything when their business is set up so granularly. And it's just more work to pay attention to the things you have to pay attention to in order to grow in the ways you want to grow. So it's almost like I have two camps of people. One that have got some things figured out and they're flying further faster. And the other that they're flying in the direction they want to fly, but it's at a much slower clip than what's possible for themselves. And
I would say that's okay. It's a process.
It is a process. So it's
a process.
The reason I'm saying this is because I think there will be a point that likely people feel compelled to type in happyerattorney.com. And that's great. That's the point in their process. But I just think there's room to say on this episode, wake up and just do a check-in and see if now's the right time. Like, do you need to keep waiting to dig into this topic and just see if it is for you, if it is for your practice?
Because the haunting's not going to stop.
Right. Yeah.
The haunting isn't going to stop. And until they recognize the pain that they're in, until they really recognize what is holding them back, then they're not going to be ready. Now, when you do contact me, we go through so that I can show you a little bit, maybe some things that you don't see, because we don't see our own blind spots. We don't. Okay. It's kind of like getting really great blood work done. We all know that eating Cheetos isn't great for us, right? Like everybody knows that. It's one thing to see that, to know that. It's another thing to see really great blood work done. And when you see the actual results in your blood, then you're like, oh my gosh, I really had no idea. That's what I do in the first meeting with people. It's just an assessment where, look, if you're totally happy and you're, first of all, if you were totally happy, you probably wouldn't be reaching out to me. But great. If you're running on all cylinders, great. But, for those who remember, if you don't ride a bike now, when you were a kid, remember when your tire was a little flat? It wasn't, all the way flat. You could still go, but you're working really, really hard and you're not getting anywhere. And you're like, oh my gosh, what is wrong? And then you figure it out. Your tire was a little flat, and then you get some air and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. That's what flat fees do. But people don't even realize, like, why is it so hard? Because you don't have air in your tire. That's what the feeling is.
If someone comes to you, how do you know what kinds of things do you dig into to figure out if their flat fees are priced where they should be?
Well, I don't know what should be means. There's a range.
Well, for them and their
I know
firm.
what shouldn't be. We run numbers. We run numbers and we check in. There's not a specific formula. It depends on what they want in life. It depends on how much they want to make, how much they want to work, what their comfort level is. We push past comfort levels and we check in as to why, but it's not Brita setting someone's number.
I don't think that. I'm just wondering how you help them get to their own understanding if the flat fees they have are enough, or like if there's room.
I ask them, we lie to ourselves. So play with me and I'll just play on you. Okay. So I should have asked your permission before I just start doing this, but you can make up numbers. Okay. Okay. So I don't know how much you charge. I don't know how you charge. Okay. So do you charge a flat rate?
I don't charge by the hour. So I charge a monthly rate for the memberships and a flat rate for private clients for the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talking about putting you on the spot. So what do your clients, what value are they getting from working with you? What's the tangible that they get from working with you?
The tangible is more money.
What does that mean?
More take home.
What does that mean?
Are you saying how much?
Yeah. How much?
It depends on the person. Oh my gosh. It totally depends on the firm. So
but what can they expect if they do what they're supposed to do?
Like their firm growth rate on average, and we are careful to make sure that like there's profit also with the growth. Their firm growth rate on average is 30% in the first year of working. I'm talking about private, first year of working with us. And that's not hard to get just because we're getting organized and getting intentional, transferring responsibility where it needs to be transferred.
But it is hard because if it was easy, they would have done it on their own.
No, well, I mean, it's not hard for us.
Okay. Which is part of the problem. Part of the problem in your thinking. Okay. Don't ask me on here without.
I see.
Okay. It's easy for you because you know what you're doing. If it was easy for them, they would have done it by now. Okay.
Totally.
So the least that a firm is not going to be up and running if they're not at least grossing 150, 200. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the least financially that they're going to be getting from you is 40, 60,000 a year.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
Up to God only knows what.
Yeah. Because most of our
Right.
private clients, most of them are doing at least $1 million a year in revenue. The smaller firms are doing the membership stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So what else are they getting?
Okay. So more money we talked about. The owners get more freedom. They're less
What does
in the
that mean?
weeds. They're not doing as much grinding work. They have more space in their days. They're transferring responsibility to others in the firm to handle certain pieces that they've been handling, but they don't need to be handling. So really shifting what their role looks like in the firm, I guess is the best way to say it, so that they're more of an owner. They have more time on the ownership of the business versus attorney. There is a level of clarity that they've never had before in terms of numbers, and they have confidence and certainty around what's what and what numbers to look at. I mean, we are a partner. I was going to say they have a partner in because there's a learning curve to this too.
Well,
they know
have
what to look.
support.
They have support. Oh yeah.
Which
I was going to say
huge.
In knowing what numbers they are going to adjust on purpose and what levers to pull to adjust those numbers.
And when I say support, that's not even what I mean. What I mean is when something has gone awry and they are scared, they have someone to call and get him down off of the ledge. That is huge. You can't put a number on that. Okay. So they also get just someone that's holding their hand, which is the support, but still just somebody that is standing by them going through this scary thing. Again, invaluable. Okay. So when you look at your numbers, and I'm not going to ask you to disclose what they are. Okay. But when you're going through your numbers, is that truly reflective of what your people are getting? Okay. Not dollar for dollar. You shouldn't be charging dollar for dollar because they should be getting a lot more than they're paying for. Okay. But is it truly reflective? Most of the time, the answer is no.
I could say with certainty the answer is no, because I've never factored into any part of this, what you just referenced about not feeling alone and having somebody there. I know what that feels like. I haven't considered that for them and their relationship. I think if I'm being totally honest, it's been more, where can I get them that they want to go? What does that mean from different aspects? But I don't think I'm looking at it from every angle that I could.
So when I first started The Happier Attorney, I did these courses on how to do video courses, and I was so excited. And, of course, the courses said, oh, the second grade teacher from Duluth started her course, and the first week, she made $40,000 and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, well, if, Denise from Duluth, the second grade teacher, I can do it, right? So I do the things, I think I'm doing them right. And I had you could only register for 1 week. Okay. I was closing it after a week because that's what I was told to do. And they said, nobody's going to buy the first day, the second day, everybody waits till the end. Right. And I don't remember how many people I had in the Facebook group. I think it was probably 200 or 300. And they said, 20, it's a warm audience, 20% should buy, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so I've done the math. And at this point, I haven't been practicing. The savings is almost out. And, I need this money. Right. And I need proof of concept. So that Friday, 5:00 comes when I'm shutting down. And I've done the Facebook posts. I think I've done everything. Guess how many courses I had sold?
1, 2. I don't know.
Zero. Okay. Zero. Not one. Not one. Okay. I was devastated. I'm crying like my whole future, fine, I'll just go back to practicing law, just practice family law for the rest of my life. Right. And then I go into the whole feeling sorry for myself and, why can this 20-year-old start a course and he, blah, blah, blah. Well, I reached out to one of my coaches at the time, expecting sympathy, which I should have known better. And he said, okay, what do I say? And I said, do we get what we need, not what we want? And he's like, figure out what you needed. Why was this a good thing? How was this a good thing? And, it wasn't the answer that I wanted. It was exactly what I needed. And, I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, of course nobody bought. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. How embarrassing, right? let me tell you, just having him have that support on a Friday evening made the difference. I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't be here today talking to you. I would have given up. Just that one phone call alone, was that worth the thousands and thousands that I paid him? Of course. That is a drop in the bucket of what I do with my clients as far as what we value, how we get there. We go through how you're harming your clients when you are undercharging them, which is not something most people think about at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's true. I'm hoping that provides comfort for listeners to think about reaching out. The only other thing I want to ask you about, I know we've gone on borrowed time here, but I am curious about the people who are listening that have done hourly for 30 years and have a base, they have loyal clients. This is the way they work. And to flip the switch now, when let's say they're 55 or 60 years old and they've had all these clients for so long, and they've had their practice for so long, those are the ones that I feel like would be the most resistant to this idea because of how much they have to internally
in their
overcome.
own head, in their own head. Yeah. It's not that much to over. Well, here's what I would say. Again, I'm not here to, convert anybody. Okay. I'm here to invite the people who are interested to a different way of life. Okay. What I will say is that I have example after example of people in the same firm where one partner was, hell no, less than 2 weeks. It took less than 2 weeks before, ain't no way I'm ever trying that, to, oh my gosh. Because the numbers don't lie. The proof is in the pudding.
So really, I mean, in that instance, what has to be overcome is what other people might think of you, what perception
of. Well, they see the results.
Right. But that's why they say no way, right? They say no way because even though this all sounds great, I've made my bed. Here I am. This is the firm that I have. They're afraid to switch, likely because of what people will think of them or what their clients will think.
Well, there's a lot of reasons people are scared to go there.
True.
Lots of reasons.
But
none of which have any validity, by the way. They don't.
I would love to have you back on and go through the list of reasons and just explain why there's zero validity.
Oh, absolutely. We could do that for hours. Bless your hearts. There's not any validity. There's just not.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Would you come back for that if we did
of course.
around 2 sometime? Basically, we'll have a list of objections. And I guess all this, you just said it. So I want to reinforce it. I'm not doing these podcasts and you don't have your business to try to convince or convert anyone, but you understand what this can do for people. And so this is your work. This is what you do. This is what you help people do. And so my hope is that these episodes can create some wiggle room in people's brains where they don't have it. Yeah.
At least be open. One of the things that I work with my clients on, and myself, because, I'm a human being too, is, attachment. When we get attached to this is the way it is, this is the way it has to be, that is always a red flag for me of there's something else going on there that's not good. So yeah, if all anybody even gets is that it's possible, okay. An acquaintance of mine, Regina, is a big flat fee proponent, has used them for a long, long time. And she's very vocal on my page. And she also has her own page. And we will still have people in both of our Facebook groups, like this is our house, come in and post that flat fees don't work in family law cases or whatever. And we're sitting there looking at each other. It's like we're on the moon and people are like, you can't get to the moon. And we're on there going, we're here. What are you talking about? Okay. All right. Well, then how have I done it in family law for, 15 plus years? How has Mark Chin done it for, I mean, it's absurd. No, you can't do it. You can't do it. Oh, okay. You're right. You're right. I'm sure you're right. We're just going to be over here doing it. Okay. Good luck to you.
Oh, so great to talk to you. Okay. So we'll have you back for part 2 of objection busting. I don't know. This has been fantastic. Hopefully this gave people who might not have heard of you yet get an introduction to you and learn about you. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Everybody can go to happierattorney.com to learn more about you and the work that you do, the flat fee work that you do with attorneys. And then also britalong.com.
Correct.
Is where they can go for personal development work.
Correct.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, you may not know this, but there's a free guide for a process I teach called Monday Map, Friday Wrap. If you go to velocitywork.com, it's all yours. It's about how to plan your time and honor your plans so that week over week, more work that moves the needle is getting done in less time. Go to velocitywork.com to get your free copy. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.